Frank, that donation is certainly gratefully accepted. We appreciate that donation. I think that
Yeah, and I apologize that I wasn't able to grab that check up and bring it here.
Where's the big check? No, but I think, but what it, and you're right, that at the point at which the application was made for last year's Christmas parade or holiday parade, that the resolution that was on the books at the time had included the holiday parade as one of the parades that the borough did not charge for.
And we met with and
Right,
asked.
right. And we all understand that history, okay? We also, and you will appreciate that in retrospect, when the borough figured out that a lot of money was being spent on a parade and that there was no reimbursement to the borough on it, that the borough was like, well, wait a minute, excuse me, what's going on here? And that it would have done a lot to improve relations with the borough if the corporation had decided on its own to say, well, you know, we did pay the township. I know the borough didn't bill us, but here's a donation towards your police coverage. That would have gone a long way. Now, and that's a year ago, so that's, you know.
Yeah, I think it is a year ago, and what's been passed is the past. I mean,
but I think what it does, it's still it has to color how we look at this.
But I don't know how it does. I don't know how you can change the rules. I mean,
well, the borough did pass a new events ordinance afterwards, which did give it the right to do that and negated the previous resolution.
I mean, I've sat here in this audience and I've seen a First Fourth committee be denied having the parade through.
Let's drop the First Fourth.
No, because it was following the rules, and then I see other organizations who. You know, I mean, there has to be some consistency here and follow the rules.
Frank, I think we're trying to get this discussion back onto this parade and the importance of this parade, okay, and what council wants to do in terms of waiving or adjusting the cost of police services for this parade, okay, and just to remind everyone who is watching this that Chief Tony has estimated that for a similar event for this year, based on last year's event, based on our new fee schedule, which does charge, you know, because our police costs are higher, that he is estimating that he would need 7 officers, and if he needs to use his full-time officers by their contract, he has to give them 4 hours each at $60 an hour. So the cost of providing police service for that one event is $1,680. So I think it's not an insignificant bit of money, and if you also in the same thought process remember that you're just making a donation for our swing set because we are watching our pennies in the borough to the point where in order to put that swing set back, we are very appreciative of donations that people are making towards that purchase. So it's not an insignificant thing for us to be considering. And so it's, you know, we're not talking pocket change. And if, you know, if the chief can schedule his part-timers, this cost would be less. But if he's looking at what he has to estimate in terms of the cost for providing for that parade, it's $1,680. So the question the council needs to consider is this a cost that we can waive, or do we need to charge the organization that's putting on the parade? And especially if we find out that the organization that's putting on the parade is able to pay the participants in the parade. Now that's what makes it different than all the other parades. No one's paid in the Halloween parade. No one's paid in the Memorial Day parade. No one's paid in any of these other parades that you've been talking about in town. The participants participate as volunteers.
Okay. Let me just. I'm going to sit down and let you guys vote, but I want to.
It's a little bit different.
I want to leave you with one thought, you know, to ponder. With everything that's been said, okay, I believe that everybody up there agreed that last year's parade was great. You know, it was enjoyed by many. Here are the facts. The parade had over 1,000 participants. Okay, the parade had estimated over 3,000 people watching it. Okay, we just had a work session meeting last Wednesday where State Street merchants were basically coming to you for help in their business and what can they do. This event puts 3,000 people on their doorstep, okay? That, you know, and they do it right, they can capture those people there, or more long-lasting, put it in their mind that XYZ company is on State Street. I don't know what else you can do for your business community than to put 3,000 people in front of their store.
No, and you're right, Frank.
And what
that's
what
true.
monetary value does that have to this borough? And one last thing. I mean, we have, you mentioned Music in the Park, what I think you said is going to be September something. Music in the Park, their budget is over $3,000. Music in the Park, I was on the committee 2 years ago. I went around and handed flyers out to about a 4-block radius. We had about 150 people show up for Music in the Park. Cost the borough $3,000. If it cost the borough, would you say $700, $800 for the police, or $1,700 for the police? If it costed $1,600, you're engaging potentially 3,000 people. Obviously, they're not all from the borough because we only have 2,000 in the borough. But think of that when you vote. Thank you.
Frank. It's my recollection last year the business association who initially made application for the parade had gone to Chief Tony to schedule the dates and the events and what have you. And it's my recollection that at the time we had approved the dates, and I believe the fee waiver was in place for that association.
Right.
So our conduct going forward when the Newtown Corporation stepped in was the same conduct that we had executed with the organization that was unable to fulfill the bill.
Right. Which is the reason we
Now
took
having
over.
said that, I mean, I'm empathetic to Mike's observations about monies that are being spent by an organization that may or may not be flush with cash. But putting it in a pure business sense, if we had an agreement with you not to charge you for a fee, I'm not one for reneging on that agreement. However, I'm concerned that we in fact asked you for a donation back sometime earlier this year, and Mike has asked you for a donation this evening. I'm so concerned that I called the Pennsylvania Association of Boroughs to ask if we were authorized as a municipality to seek donations. The response was, we are not. And that the only way we, in fact, can acquire funds on our own is through taxations. So I think it's a moot point to ask you for a donation, and I think we should table this thing in favor of the Newtown Corporation in not requiring them to pay the $665 because of the agreement we had in place. And if our police chief is not empowered to act when it comes to these events as he was back then, when is he empowered to do something? And we need to put this to bed, because I don't want to create an environment that you leave here this evening thinking that the only way you're going to get the Christmas parade approved is if you pay that $665. That's the wrong thing for us to do. And I'm taking umbrage with what Mike said, but I think that would be the wrong thing to do if we're creating that impression. And I, for one, would not support that as a resolution. But I think we should get on with business and make a decision based on the facts at hand with respect to whether or not we're going to waive fees for this year's Christmas parade. It's history. Let's move on.
Yeah, and that's all I would ask is a decision to be made tonight, because we're running into our 90-day window as far as scheduling and all the particulars for the parade. Thank you.
If I may, Frank, hold on a second, please. Are you planning on paying participants in the parade again this year?
We haven't had a discussion on who's going to be participant, what fee or fees may or may not be paid.
Well, do you know what bands you're inviting?
The committee has not. We're waiting for authorization from the borough and the township to. That's why I put the application in 6 months ahead of time, because we didn't want to run into any issues.
Do you have a budget?
I don't know that we have a formalized budget for it.
Well, who would know that?
I don't understand what the relevance of how much we may or may not spend on this year.
Very simply, relevance is this. Bob just articulated well, I think, what I'll call the formal legal position going back to last year, which is to say that the waiver was granted originally with another applicant, and basically you stepped into those shoes. Fair statement? And I think that's correct. I think you're right. So that's the position of the Newtown Corporation in terms of the process, and I think that's true. The discussion more recently has centered not on that, but on what I'll call the equities of it. What's right, what's fair. Because we did find out you spent $12,000 or maybe more on that parade. And that certainly had us scratching our heads to wonder why, if you could pay a band $1,000 each, and there were 3 of them, and you had an additional $9,000 you could spend, you couldn't consider the borough's $662 as a cost of the parade, because we can use the money. Those are our police that must be committed. No one else can do that job, and we could use the money. So it's not the enforcement of the process from last year that we're talking about, or that I'm talking about. It's the rightness or the wrongness of it. And frankly, whether or not it passes the smell test when it turns out you pay $12,000 for that parade. I do not understand the problem with the corporation's board of directors putting this to bed by very simply saying, we appreciate the borough's help. Only their police could have done that job. While we are not obligated to pay that amount, we will pay that amount.
You keep beating the same horse, Mike.
And when it comes to the next parade, we'll talk. So, again, it's not the matter of process.
If you're going to keep repeating yourself, I'm just going to sit down, okay?
Do what you want.
You know, but
So it's not a matter of the process. It's a matter of the rightness of the action was taken when we found out how much money was spent. And therefore, I asked you if there was a budget for this coming year's parade. And again,
there has not been a formalized budget, but there was, you know, which will be taken up at our next meeting, what our budget is going to be for this. This is why I wanted to get this, you know, vote to see what, you know, where we were going to go, where we're going with this parade. But it's certainly going to be considerably less than we spent last year. It has to be.
well,
Yeah.
and I'm particularly
Can I bring this to a close?
Please.
Can we, yeah, let's, we're going over old
Question,
territory,
please.
and
That's
I,
it.
yeah, I think we know what all the issues are out there, and I think we need to talk about this year's parade. And it did come through loud and clear from the business people on State Street at last week's meeting that they do appreciate events, that events do help them. I did talk to some other business people outside to say, well, what do you think? Does it help? Does it hinder? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Certainly bringing people to town is a good thing. Having a holiday parade is part of our, it's part of our calendar, our mental calendar. It's something that happens every year. It's something that holiday parade kind of is a marker. It says, okay, this is the beginning of this holiday season. For whatever you do during that holiday season, it helps. It's a tradition, and I think that we're certainly grappling in terms of finances, but I think that we're not going to solve the issues of last year. So it set the stage for the conversation this year, but let's set that aside. Let's talk now about what we want to do this year in terms of are the costs that the chief has estimated, and I believe are in his budget, are they costs that we as council want to incur without requesting assistance from the organization that's running this parade? And I think that's where we are in this discussion in terms of what we're going to tell this organization. They need to be able to budget their parade. We need to be able to budget what we have to do on our side. It isn't helping, though I'm sure I just did it as well as everybody else, but to go over what has happened over the last 12 months and revisit it and revisit it and revisit it. So if I could open that part of the conversation up to council again, get a feel for where you are in terms of, and as I understand it, maybe Paul, you can help me out here, but our current ordinance allows us to charge for police services or a portion thereof if we feel the need to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the ordinance
Yeah.
provides for special services.
So it's up to council at this point whether we wish to waive or not waive, or in total or in part.